Somewhere, lost in the clouded annals of animation, lies a series that many have seen, a mysterious cartoon called Over the Garden Wall, where long-forgotten stories are revealed to those who travel through the wood. Cartoon Network's Over the Garden Wall, created by Patrick McHale and only spanning 10 episodes running 12 minutes each, quickly cemented itself as one of the most beloved pieces of modern animation after its debut in 2014. Garnering acclaim and becoming an annual Halloween rewatch for countless fans, including me. Now, 10 years after its debut, Garden Wall still stands as a modern classic, a truly one-of-a-kind miniseries that both captures the oddball approach of many modern Cartoon Network shows, while also pulling its aesthetics and storytelling sensibilities from long-gone folktales. It's all in service to a story about being lost, facing your fears, and embracing the unknown for all its beauty and discomfort. It's a piece of animation that taps into something deep within us that feels like a long-forgotten memory slowly rising to the surface. It's an experience that remains passionately loved, even after a decade of cartoons drawing from its inspiration. This is the timeless wonder of Over the Garden Wall. The story of Over the Garden Wall begins with the animated series that has defined so much of Cartoon Network's past decade and a half, Adventure Time. Patrick McHale helped to create the series alongside Pendleton Ward and Adam Muto, going on to serve as the show's creative director for its first 2 seasons. Meanwhile, McHale also worked on an animated short titled Tome of the Unknown for Cartoon Network's Shorts Development Program. With the studio so impressed with the 8-minute short, they decided to showcase it across festivals in 2013, and then commission what would become Over the Garden Wall based on its ideas and characters, with McHale leaving Adventure Time to work on the miniseries. Tome of the Unknown has a lot of the pieces that would make up Over the Garden Wall in place already. Here, teenager Wirt and his young half-brother Greg, played by Elijah Wood and Colin Dean, are on a journey through the unknown and already accompanied by Beatrice, voiced by Natasha Leggero here and played by Melanie Linsky in the miniseries. Except that they're searching for the lost book known as the Tome of the Unknown, which would help them get back home. That would have been the overarching story of the series, putting a more defined narrative that propelled its characters from episode to episode in what would have been a longer, and darker according to the ideas originally in place for its episodes, show. Instead, as McHale and company worked on the final story, the eventual miniseries would drop that idea in favor of the very simple notion of just getting back home. As for the animation and sound design, Tome has a lot of the character designs already in place, with that signature style of early 20th century Americana informing its fashion, setting, and music, with C.W. Stone King providing several songs as Melon Man singer John Crops. There's a little more squash and stretch and exaggeration to the expressions of its characters when compared to how they would be animated in the finalized series, but take out a couple references to the slightly different larger plot, and this could easily fit into the show. But most important is that its signature blend of darkness and absurdism is fully in place here for a story about a vegetable car trip toward the big city and a garden party gone wrong. The way those two elements come together, pushing back and forth and blending, not just here in Tome, but in every Garden Wall episode, is what gives the show its really distinct experience. Ideas of death, loneliness, depression, and guilt all hang over every episode, and are what each main and supporting character are dealing with to some degree. But the show never wallows in its darkness. Instead, it accepts it as part of life and moves on. Not so much hopeful as simply unbothered. And with Tome of the Unknown being really well received, McHale was greenlit by Cartoon Network to make the series. The show that resulted was Over the Garden Wall, originally airing on Cartoon Network from November 3rd through November 7th, 2014, with 2 episodes a night. And while McHale is the creator, Garden Wall was brought to life by a big creative team, with all episodes directed by Nate Cash, who had previously worked on Adventure Time and SpongeBob SquarePants, and a variety of writers including Tom Herpich, Katie Krentz, Amalia Lavari, Burt Yoon, and more. The result was that Garden Wall was a hit and gained recognition really quick, winning an Emmy for Outstanding Animated Program and becoming what I really think is a modern classic of both animation and Halloween programming. The story sees half-brothers Greg and Wirt traveling through the fantastical forest of the unknown, at odds with one another but slowly growing closer together through their journey. Their goal is simple: get back home, but becomes more complicated as they go along, encountering friends, enemies, and many strange beings that feel pulled from America's mythic past, while targeted by a dark creature known only as the Beast, who wants to feed on them. And that's really it for the plot. Mikhail would describe Garden Wall as a comedy, but first and foremost, it's trying to be an experience for the audience. That's not to say the show is without a story, it's just not plot-heavy. Likewise, it's not interested in constantly teaching lessons through its episodes. Not that there's anything wrong with that format. Plenty of cartoons structure themselves around the characters, and in turn the audience, learning a lesson about how to act or treat others. The characters and conflicts of Garden Wall are simply too odd to be teachable moments. Like in The Ringing of the Bell, where our brothers enter the home of Lorna and Auntie Whispers. These two are not what they seem, but there's not necessarily a definitive resolution to the darker truths about their little family. In almost every episode, the brothers stumble onto a new town or home, and the people living there, all in the midst of their own problems and often causing some sort of mix-up or miscommunication to be sorted out as they continue on their journey. There's the Pottsfield Harvest Festival that the brothers accidentally disrupt. The teacher, Ms. Langtree, who laments over the man who abandoned her. Don't worry, he was just stuck in a gorilla costume. The tavern patrons who live in fear of the Beast. The wealthy
I'm the highwayman.
Okay, good to know. Well, you see,
I'm the highwayman.
Anyway, you get my point. Almost every episode can be watched on its own without the need for understanding the larger story. But what connects these encounters are how the characters grow in relation to one another. Most important is Wirt's resentment of young Greg, son of his remarried father, and Greg's own low views of himself.
'Cause Uncle Endicott pegged me all wrong. I've got no sense. No sense at all.
There's also Beatrice, who we learn was transformed into a bird alongside her family and now carries the guilt of being the cause. And the woodsman, compelled to serve the Beast in the deep dark forest to preserve his daughter's soul. Each of these characters grow by facing the unknown and what they fear the most, which is always their own feelings and beliefs they've tried to run away from. Resentment, shame, guilt, grief. These are perfectly accompanied by a season that charms us, while also reminding us of the fleeting, transitive nature of life. To create an unknown built out of the past, Mikhail pulled images and ideas from a lot of early 20th century and late 19th century influences, which inform the character archetypes, vaguely turn-of-the-century setting, and folktale approach to the types of people and creatures Greg and Wirt encounter. Among the many different inspirations are The Complete Optimist, a book of cartoons by Childe Harold from 1912, Walt Disney's early Alice comedies, blending live action and animation in shorts from the 1920s, the art of Gustave Doré, best known for his paintings interpreting Dante's Inferno, but who made many fantastical landscapes, the sketches of Victorian artist John Tenniel, which often centered on Alice in Wonderland, Little Nemo and Slumberland for Babes in the Woods specifically, children's books and board games produced by McLaughlin Brothers Inc., whose then cutting-edge color printing techniques for their art influenced the color palette of many episodes, and the 1800s game of Frog Pond, explaining the show's obsession with talking, singing, ever-renamed amphibians. In particular, vintage Halloween postcards inform so many of the characters and environments seen throughout Garden Wall. Witches, pumpkin-headed bystanders, even Tome of the Unknown's Melancar. It's all there in images more than a century old and created via chromolithography, where hand-drawn paintings were colored with limestone printing slabs. These images are indelible parts of 19th century Americana, baking themselves into the recesses of US culture and influencing generations of art. Even if we aren't fully aware of their influence, they've become part of the image that America has created of its bygone rural artistic expression, blending a workman approach to art with agriculture and commerce. Personally, I've always been fascinated by vintage commercial art, where wholly original pieces were drawn and painted by working artists whose names we'll never know, not seeking fame but simply making a living, yet still influencing the development of American culture. By making these the basis of the show's visuals, they help to create the familiarity of Garden Wall. "There's something about chromolithography that draws me in," said McHale, who collected these postcards from vintage stores when he was young. "I think it's because, like wax cylinder recordings, you can feel that they're not just reproductions of art. They're actual recorded art, like an actual fingerprint rather than a photocopy of a fingerprint. I don't know if I'm making any sense here, but a certain era of postcards feels like it carries the ghosts of the artists and technicians who made them. It's a very eclectic blend of artistic influences, but they all share a folk approach to both the creation and subjects of each. These are hand-drawn, craftsman-style artistic methods, when even mass-produced games and books were still done by hand, reflecting the shaping and hard work of the artist. Homaging them creates a mood and space somewhat removed from the modern day, at once familiar and strange. The opening minutes of the series hint toward all of these influences and characters, with toys and rocks and paper boats all soon encountered in the Unknown's population, bringing the past to life. And of course, you can't talk about the feelings evoked by Over the Garden Wall without talking about its incredible music.
Yeah, lover! Swing us your left out!
The majority of the series score is composed by the Blasting Company and blends together folk, Dixie, vintage jazz, ragtime, and jug band music styles, with McHale heavily involved in the songwriting to evoke the early 20th century. And Garden Wall is also partially a musical, with plenty of diegetic songs busted out by characters to express how they feel, along with several as part of the soundtrack. My favorites? The relieving Patient is the Night, the extremely silly Ms. Langtry's Lament, the big band Over the Garden Wall, and the cut banger Send Me a Peach. To me, this all adds to the timeless nature of the show and its otherworldly nature. As while Greg and Wirt, two outsiders, are struck by how strange this all is, suddenly bursting out into song and accompanied by full orchestration is as commonplace as talking for everyone native to the unknown. Over the Garden Wall is designed to be a new folktale for a time when modernity and disillusionment is separating us from our sense of myth-making and wonder. And by its nature, Garden Wall is a very American folktale, pulling from the autumnal side of Americana, with fall leaves, harvests, and the long-gone frontier of Western expansion. The unknown and all its strangeness revives the frontier as fantasy, blending familiar characters and comforting experiences with the unease of untamed nature and unknowable darkness. The show's dreamy mood is established right from the start, as Greg and Wirt trek through the woods without really knowing how or why they got there. All we really know is that they're looking for a way back home, and that the beast is out there somewhere. And while the opening episode of The Old Grist Mill has an air of oppressive darkness, we find that the mood and aesthetic of Over the Garden Wall is much more varied than what we first expect. The show actually makes it real clear whether an episode will be a lighter story without actual danger, or a scarier entry with real danger present, by having it take place during the day or night. It's simple. Episodes like Hard Times at the Husk and Bee and Schooltown Follies happen entirely during the day, and their stakes are very silly and light. Others, like The Old Grist Mill, Songs of the Dark Lantern, and The Unknown, are much scarier and leverage the dark, oppressive woods to create an air of menace, with the beast or its influence often lurking nearby. An episode like Lullaby in Frogland transitions from day to night, with the first half on the riverboat being totally absurd, and the second half putting Greg and Wirt in danger from Adelaide. Each step of the way, Wirt and Greg grow more and more into themselves, pushed to embrace the unknown. With a nervous but endearing energy in Elijah Wood's performance, Wirt is anxious and always unsure of himself. He's the most complex character of the series, both a hero and a fool, someone who really doesn't want to be on this adventure, but who's really the only one that can keep them on their path. Content to be slightly forlorn, Wirt lets his pessimistic side get the best of him, both in the unknown and the modern world, letting himself be intimidated by super cool guy Jason Funderburker.
Hey, Sarah. Are you ready to go?
Hey, Jason Funderburker.
Oh, hey, Wirt.
And being the first of the two brothers to give up hope of getting home. Naturally, his anxious side and distrust put him at odds with Beatrice, at first for a good reason, but he has to overcome those feelings to form a stronger bond. He never really wants to be wherever they are, and he clearly resents his forced connection to Greg. Early on, Wirt is told,
You are the elder child. You are responsible for you and your brother's actions.
And while he rejects this at first, his entire arc is to not just accept this responsibility, but to grow braver and stronger because of it. Meanwhile, Greg is this wonderful, innocent cipher to see the world through. not everything in the unknown is dangerous. In fact, a lot of the show's charm comes from supposedly deadly and dark creatures being much nicer than they seem.
I sentence you to a few hours of manual labor.
Wait, what?
But for much of its runtime, the darkest parts of the unknown are innocently experienced by Greg, who is irrepressibly positive, and the source of all the show's best quotes.
You have beautiful eyes. It's a rock fact. Ain't that just the way? Gorilla! Gorilla! I think he's asleep. Let's go steal his stuff.
What?
Wait, Unky! Face your fears! So we came here to burgle your turts.
No,
Did you know that dinosaurs had big ears, but everyone forgot because dinosaur ears don't have bones?
No, I didn't know that, Greg.
That's because it's not true. It's a rock fact. You done good, Mr. President. You done good. You'll never convict. You have no proof. Thank you, old lady Daniels.
Goodbye, Gregory. And please don't call me old lady.
Yes, sir, young man.
The true threat of the beast is to steal and snuff out that positivity and innocence, and to turn the unknown from a place to grow into a place to wither away. Obviously, we're getting deep into spoilers here for what I think is generally an unspoilable show, as Garden Wall is much more about the experience than the plot, but there are some late reveals that begin to shed light on what this has all been about. The penultimate episode, Into the Unknown, reveals that Wirt and Greg are actually from the modern day, and after several mishaps on Halloween night as Wirt tries to impress his crush Sarah, the boys are nearly hit by a train, whose whistle can be heard in the sound design from the very beginning, and fall into a lake, knocked unconscious and possibly dying only to wake up in the unknown. Is this all a dream? Is the unknown another realm? The fact that our heroes have suddenly been transported into a vague past immediately places Garden Wall in conversation with another folk story, Mark Twain's A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, where a simple knock on the head can send you through time. There are, however, several clues to what the unknown truly is. Back in the modern world, Greg and Wirt follow Sarah and friends into the Eternal Garden Cemetery. Oh, and would you look at that? Whose name is on a tombstone they hide behind? Quincy Endicott. On the run from the police for trespassing, Greg and Wirt quite literally go over the garden wall and are soon in the unknown. To me, the unknown is some sort of afterlife, and given that there's little clues that Wirt, Greg, and Jason Funderburker, the frog, not the super cool guy, really did go there, this wasn't just a dream. The unknown can stand in for many different things, and I think all of them are valid. Adulthood, love, responsibility, anything that we have to face to move forward in life. But what's more unknown than what lies on the other side of death? Autumn as a season is really a reminder about the fleeting nature of life, a time where many things end as the world around us crosses over into the dead of winter. All things must end, but autumn is life in the midst of that ending, creating beauty out of loss as everything around us reminds us that we are in a constant cycle of death, rebirth, life, and a return to the grave. Still, there is good that comes from it in the harvest. How we choose to feel about that is up to each person, and will depend on the time of life you find yourself in. Of course, it's no surprise that the death present in autumn, the closing in of the cold in the air, and the association of horror and the season are all closely tied together. To many, death is the scariest idea of all. Whether suddenly or slowly, the thought that life can and will be taken away from us is the ultimate loss of control. But when we have no choice but to face it, we can celebrate it, revel in it, and let it into our lives, at least for a little while. Personally, autumn has always felt like a deep sigh of relief to me, a moment where the world quiets and prepares for rest before we begin again. Likewise, Halloween, the 3 days of All-Hallowtide, composed of All Saints' Eve, All Saints' Day, and All Souls' Day, and Dia de los Muertos, all draw our attention to remembering and honoring the dead. Over time, these have seeped into secular culture, but their fixations on the other side of death have left an imprint on how even an atheist celebrates the season. And cultures all around the world believe that the barrier between the realms of the living and the dead becomes thin at this time. Obviously, there's an endless stream of stories where the dead cross over into the world of the living, with ghosts, ghouls, demons, and all sorts of spirits visible to and acting upon us. But this door opens both ways, and the living may suddenly find themselves in the realm of the dead. It's rarer in fiction, but everything from the Book of Revelation to Dante's Divine Comedy to Pixar's Coco to George Saunders' Lincoln in the Bardo take us into and back out of the afterlife, with characters that never died, and learn to embrace life in the process. At all other times, a trip to the other side is a one-way ticket. Shakespeare, after all, did refer to it in Hamlet as the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns. But the truth is that humanity is obsessed with death, and in these times where we're forced to confront it, we imagine a way in which we turn the unknown into the known. If the unknown really is the afterlife, Garden Wall portrays it as a place where each person's own fears and joys shape the experience, turning it into either a time of bountiful harvest, where our own good deeds are rewarded, or an endless death, where everything good ends and we wallow in our worst notions about ourselves. Of course, this is all completely left up to our interpretation, and really shouldn't be given a definitive explanation, because what's so great about Over the Garden Wall is how each viewer can draw something different from it. A lot of things are better left unsaid and unknown, said McHale. I did come up with various larger mythologies, but none of them are the real one, and all theories are valid. To me, even Greg and Wirt's more modern setting is still probably part of the unknown too, in one way or another. Or not. That sense of the unknown in nature also gave rise to the many different monsters of American folklore across the centuries, with creatures like the Jersey Devil, Bigfoot, the Mothman, the Folk Monster, the Wendigo, and many, many more, born out of settlers' expansions into the frontier, and their fears creating monsters out of the darkness at the edge of town. Here, our fears of the unknown give birth to the Beast.
There is only me. There is only my way. There is only the forest, and there is only surrender.
The Beast, voiced by Samuel Raimi, is this very undefined, oppressive force of evil, but you never really know exactly what it wants besides to sustain itself. To me, the Beast represents everything that Garden Wall is trying to say. That while there is darkness in the world, our fears and worries are what can harm us the most, holding us back from a better life, keeping us from connecting with the people we should love, and not exploring the wider, better world out there. The reveal that the victims of the Beast are turned into edelwood trees, which are then chopped down to provide fuel for his lantern, is really dark, but they also tie into the overarching ideas of depression and hopelessness. By the end, both Greg and Wirt have to help each other not give up on life. The Beast's methods are simple: lie, create fear, and stay in the darkness, where our own fears prey on us. Every character grows by confronting their fear and being honest with themselves and the people around them. Greg confesses to stealing his rock. Wirt talks to Sarah. Beatrice tells her family that she caused their transformation. The woodsman returns home to face his loss. And many, many more all face the unknown and understand something new by doing so.
No, woodsman!
Despite Garden Wall's popularity, there's been a surprisingly small amount of adaptations or continuations of the story in the decades since its premiere. Now, I'm not entirely sure what a comic book is, but there have been several miniseries and ongoing series published by Boom Studios that act as prequels, midquels, and sequels to the series, with some written by McHale. But beyond those, Over the Garden Wall stands on its own. Not a franchise, not an endless IP, not a merchandising machine, but instead a modern folktale whose popularity comes from that timeless story of conquering our fears. There is something both beautiful and frightening about the unknown, but the braver we are, the more beautiful the world will become. Be brave, and I'll meet you in the unknown. Thanks for watching today's video, and the final video of the Halloween season. And what could be a more perfect capper to this series of videos and a celebration of Halloween and the fall season itself than finally talking about Over the Garden Wall. Several years ago, I was a guest on a video by For Every Kind of Geek, so make sure to go check that out because that is a great video. But I've always wanted to do my own video as well. And after many rewatches and realizing that the 10th anniversary of the show was coming up, I realized that now was the best time to do it. I can't believe that Over the Garden Wall is only 10 years old, because, as is designed by the series, it's a show and a story that really feels timeless. And if you told me that it had been made 20 years ago, or 40 years ago, or 60 years ago, I'd believe you. After all, that was the point of McHale's vision, and it absolutely 100% worked. And after seeing it shortly after it premiered on Cartoon Network, I've been obsessed with it. Every time I revisit it, it feels fresh and really exciting to me, and its interpretations seem to change for me with every year. But really, it's a show that doesn't need any explanation. It's something that we just experience, appreciate, and let sink into our bones. And I hope this video has helped you do the same. I know that even with unpacking it all and diving deeper and deeper into this series, I will return to this show every year. And at the time of this recording, I'm patiently waiting the arrival of the Read and Listen book and vinyl that is finally being replicated, after it came out as a very limited release when the show was first premiered. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Over the Garden Wall, your favorite cartoons for the Halloween season, and what other series you'd like for me to cover. A video on Gravity Falls is absolutely coming sometime in the near future. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons for their continued support. And if you'd like to be a patron, it's only $1 a month for early access to every video and exclusive Patreon-only reviews, with lots and lots of Halloween podcast exclusive reviews for Patreon released this month, as voted on by patrons. So until next time, I hope that you're journeying into the unknown and having a happy Halloween.